Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Up first, hazardous weather graphic. Got some wind advisories out, specifically here for the upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country areas, looking for winds, mostly until 7 p.m. this evening, winds gusting 40 miles per hour. And again, they're already starting to diminish in this area, and this advisory will end in just a few hours. Otherwise, we've got a wind advisory out for tonight until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning here for the upper Kobuk Valley, or the Kobuk Valley area north of Ambler, and that's for winds gusting to 40 to 50 miles per hour in that area throughout the night tonight. And then there's a high surf advisory out for the north-facing shore, the north shore of St. Lawrence Island, and also Wales there on the Bering Sea coast. And high surf, could be some minor beach erosion as those strong northerly winds continue to blow 32 as high as 50 miles per hour throughout the night tonight. That's out also till about 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Otherwise, we've had fire danger on the increase here, again with those gusty winds and dry conditions with some sunshine. We've got high and even extreme fire danger here from the Noatak Valley, Kivalina, all the way out to the coastline and back along and just south of the Brooks Range there, as well as some high fire danger now showing up on the western Arctic coast. Howard Pass, Howard Pass in the Brooks Range there, they had northeast winds gusting 50 miles an hour, for example. And moving on to satellite imagery, see the low pressure area that moved up yesterday to the Yukon Delta area, actually late yesterday and last night, became rather stationary, still spinning out there today. That brought a widespread area of fairly moderate amounts of rain today from the southwest coast eastward across Bristol Bay into south central Alaska area and up toward the Susitna Valley, and some lighter amounts of precipitation occurring up here, mostly lighter. Some areas had, well, actually a significant amount, but moving up there into the northeast interior areas. But see the Copper River Basin there, especially from the eastern areas or the central Copper River Basin off to the east, seeing some a little bit of sunshine, some breaks in the clouds there. And that allowed a couple of thunderstorms to develop just west of Gulkana and then off to the northeast. Just isolated lightning strikes this afternoon in those areas. And then that frontal boundary, you can see, starts out looking more impressive here than it does on the final frame. Actually, it is slowly moving eastward and slowly weakening, and that laid down a fair amount of rain along the northeast Gulf Coast, north coast of the Panhandle, on back up toward Yakutat. 12-hour amounts ending at mid-afternoon ranged from about 2.8 inches at Yakutat, and then Dry Bay had 3 1/3 inches of rain again in a 12-hour period, and both locations 24-hour amounts over 4 inches. And by contrast, I believe just 0.05 of an inch falling at Sitka, and then so it really drops off as you head east and southeast, just a few hundredths over the south central Panhandle to none farther to the south. And rolling this along again, you can see a break here behind the front that seems to be growing as the thing pushes eastward due to the slower movement of the low lagging back behind, and kind of a boundary here with that cloud deck resulting in some sunshine and those east-northeast winds, pretty dry conditions, but also chilly air coming down from the north-northeast there, as you can see, spreading onto the north slope from the Arctic coast, and that brought a little bit of light snow today at the Barrow area there and the observations with mixed precipitation along other areas of the Arctic coast. Otherwise, just a few showers along that trough there in the upslope areas of the north side of the Brooks Range, and then downslope areas saw some sunshine with those gusty winds, as I mentioned, and we've got those 30 gust 50-mile-per-hour winds going through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, and pretty windy today as well as wet over the southwest interior in association with that 994 millibar low. Platinum wind gusts 55 miles per hour this afternoon, and Mountain Village picking up half an inch of rain, as did Iliamna, about the same amount there, roughly half an inch falling during the day today. And also Independence Mine picked up a half an inch as well, with fairly good rainfall amounts through this area with that slow-moving system. Slowly weakening, gusty winds, just a few showers here across the Alaska Peninsula, winds 25, maybe gusting 40 miles an hour, all in a diminishing mode this afternoon. And just west-northwest flow here across the Bering Sea. Mostly just clouds, trough with a little bit of moisture in it here, but that's north of the Aleutians, west of the Pribilofs. And you can see the gradient really slackens off, high pressure controlling the central western Bering Sea there, but a lot of clouds, but winds are light and conditions are dry. And we'll see for tonight, that front pushes eastward, so it's spread rain all the way down to Dixon Entrance. It'll be lighter rainfall amounts, much more showery here behind the front for the eastern North Gulf Coast, back into Prince William Sound. Showery, cloudy, Copper River Basin on up into the mid-Tanana Valley there. The front pushing northward, the occluded front, and the main front pushing eastward. Winds diminishing. This low continues to weaken. You see now up over 1,000 millibars central pressure. So winds will be diminishing here across to the southwest and Bristol Bay areas, but it'll stay pretty wet. This trough will bring another surge of showers into Cook Inlet, showers or rain, the Kenai Peninsula. And then Brooks Range, showers becoming less scattered. Still some flurries possible with some fog along the central Arctic coast. Dry, mostly clear here along the northwest coast from Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, right down across Noatak Valley into Selawik and Kotzebue. Seward Peninsula looks pretty good. Get into the rain chances there toward White Mountain across Norton Sound, closer into that low center. This trough swings south of the St. Lawrence Island area, so look for the precipitation to end there. Westerly flow, pretty good across the Bering Sea, eastern Bering, so showers, breezy for the Pribilofs. Now come right into the Alaska Peninsula, beginning to clear out over Kodiak Island, which will lead to mostly sunny skies there tomorrow, as well as Bristol Bay. Clouds and rain or showers, not as heavy as we saw today, be definitely lighter here for the southern half of the state. Fair chance of sun back to the north and northwest. And high pressure keeps conditions light as far as wind and rain goes out over the Aleutians. And for the Wednesday outlook, looks not too bad there over most of the southeast coast, partly sunny. Maybe a few scattered showers, Elfin Cove, Haines, and Skagway. Otherwise, partly sunny for the North Gulf Coast, and you get into some possible shower conditions here over the south central areas, mostly over the mountains. Isolated thunderstorms possible. Weak trough now, really weakened. That system is much weakened, and just showers from Kodiak Island back along the Alaska Peninsula and northeast Bristol Bay. Cold front brings rain into the Arctic coast, and the next front pushes rain, just barely making the Shimian Attu area on Wednesday. Otherwise, high pressure holds out over the western Bering. And for the lows tonight, either side of freezing there for the Arctic coast, 30s, maybe upper 20s, Anatuvik Pass, and then 40s south of the mountains there, mid to upper 40s, Tanana Valley, all the way out to the southwest coast, mid 40s in the Aleutians, lower 50s, south central Alaska, lower to mid for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow, 60s, mid 60s, southern Panhandle, otherwise 50s over much of the interior, maybe lower 60s to sit in the valley, followed by lows a little milder on the Arctic coast, and the highs for the next day near 60 over the southwest interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First flying weather graphic here showing a lot of IFR across the Bering Sea, right into the southwest coast, up into the central interior there on Tanana, back down across Susitna, Valley, Matanuska Valley, Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast, on into the Panhandle. Also a lot of IFR up here from the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast. Some of that looks like into the northern Koyukuk Valley. And for the afternoon, that all retreats back, marginal now, right along the crest of the Brooks Range, out to the coast. IFR off the coast up there. VFR, Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, Kotzebue, Selawik Valley, eastward across the upper Yukon, Porcupine River areas. And IFR, south side of the Central Alaska Range, IFR, Prince William Sound, and northern Panhandle. VFR, Fognak, Kodiak Island, mostly on the east side here, marginal on the southwest coast. IFR from Kuskokwim Bay down to the peninsula, across the Aleutians. Wednesday morning, marginal VFR now here for the Fox Islands, but the central western Aleutians still in the IFR zone. And southeast Bering, Bristol Bay IFR, right on up into Kuskokwim Bay. IFR up along the Alaska Range there, northern Sitna Valley areas, and marginal VFR with up in the Tanana Valley, IFR here, White Mountains, and then VFR farther to the north there. Until you get to the western Arctic coast and marginal to IFR conditions. Marginal VFR mostly for the Panhandle. Afternoon, breaking out with some VFR there over central and southern southeast coast. Marginal along the coast, marginal for the Gulf of Alaska. Copper River Basin, south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, still some IFR here. Denali Park area and north side of the Alaska Peninsula there a little bit. Otherwise, marginal VFR here for the central Aleutians, Pribilofs. Northward, then the VFR breaks out St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound, Yukon Delta, all the way through the Bering Strait, up to the northwest coast, IFR on the Arctic coast. Passes Anatuvik, marginal VFR tomorrow. Same forecast for Adigan, marginal VFR at times. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, lowest conditions early on, then gradually becoming marginal. That same forecast holds for Rainy. And for windy, marginal VFR, best chance of seeing IFR will be on that southern entrance. And then for Isabel, IFR occasionally. Mentasta, mostly marginal. Tanita also looks marginal. Could be a little bit IFR at some point in the day tomorrow morning. And Portage, though, IFR trending toward marginal. Chilkoot and White, same thing. IFR maybe becoming marginal in the afternoon. Freezing levels. Cold air now coming down to the Brooks Range. See at the surface. There, most of the north slope, 2,000 feet along and just south of the Brooks Range, 6,000 feet central southern interior, 8 to 12,000 feet here over the southeast coast, and about 6 to 8 out over the Bering Sea. Icing mostly through this zone here, some areas of isolated moderate, but a few spots there really just out over the water, considerable moderate. All this above 6,000 feet though. And Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, pretty much icing free down to Kodiak, and that's sliding across the Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast, and then a possible band up here in the central interior. Look at the jet stream, cold upper low there, just west of Banks Islands, that's pulling that colder air down into the Brooks Range across the north slope, and cool trough here, centered, actually a trough extending all the way down to that center there, right along the southwest coast. It's weakening, so we're on the cold side of the jet. So it's heaviest precipitation will be down to the south and the main jet down to the south. So kind of cool and showery conditions up over the interior. And for 9,000 feet, northwesterlies, 20 knots, 20 to 30 along the coast, 30 across the Alaska Peninsula, 40 for the Pribilofs, lighter for the Aleutians. Westerlies, west-southwest, 25 to 35 into the Panhandle. And at 3,000 feet, same direction, about 15 to 20 though, and then 30-knot winds, maybe up to 40 there coming across Kamishak Bay, 40 knots for Bristol Bay, 25 to 30 on up to the Bering Strait. Not too bad for the Arctic coast, and light winds under high pressure out there over the western Aleutians, but northwesterlies here, 25 to 30 from the Pribilofs on down across eastern Aleutians, 30 knots across the Alaska Peninsula. Turbulence-wise, moderate chop, pretty widespread, especially for small aircraft. Northern Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, central eastern Aleutians, St. Lawrence Island through the Bering Strait. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snider, and joining me today is Cindy Preller. She's the Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska Region's National Weather Service. And Cindy, we hear a lot about tsunamis in the news, probably a lot more than we used to, but let's remind everybody, what is a tsunami?
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Sure.
Tsunami is basically, it's really simple. It's just a disturbance in the water column. So the entire water column from the seafloor to the sea surface is disturbed by something major, usually a major earthquake. But it can also be a volcanic eruption, even an asteroid. Landslide is especially dangerous.
Okay, so if I'm sitting in my bathtub and I drop a bath toy, that could be a bathtub tsunami.
It is absolutely a bathtub tsunami.
Okay, very good. So Alaska is one of the states, or maybe the state, with the greatest amount of coastline, so tsunamis are a pretty major risk here in Alaska. Who is most at risk?
Yeah, Alaska is significant. We actually make most of the Pacific's tsunamis on the Aleutian Trench, and it's where the Pacific plate is subducting underneath the American plate, and we produce some very large, great quakes, and of course the most at risk is the Aleutian Trench.
Okay.
But that extends into south central Alaska as well. They're at huge risk, and then southeast Alaska's risk is really mostly landslide focused.
Okay. Are there any places along the Alaskan coastline that don't have a tsunami risk, or at least a very, very low risk?
Absolutely. The Bering Sea's risk is very low, and the Arctic's risk is very low as well.
Okay, so when we're talking about tsunami dangers, those are places that need to be monitored, but probably not really.
No, I mean, I won't say never.
Yeah, sure.
Because I know better.
Science knows better.
Right. So,
very good.
Near to never.
Okay. Well, let's just say you're on the coast, anywhere in Alaska. What are warning signs that tsunami dangers are threatening you right now?
This is super important because Alaska's greatest risk, especially out on the Aleutians and South Central, is a near-field tsunami, and then of course the landslides in southeast. It's even more intense because we can't.
So shorter warning time.
No warning time.
Okay.
The earthquake is the warning.
Okay.
And that is the most important thing for anybody to remember. The water can arrive in less than 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Wow.
Yeah. At the National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, we need to get the warning out in 5 minutes. So for those near-field tsunamis, it's the earthquake is the warning. So if you feel shaking, and of course the first thing you do is drop, cover, and hold, and you need to start counting slowly to 20.
The right way. How do you do that?
Oh, I teach kids to do it with their favorite things. So 1 chocolate, 2 chocolate, 3 chocolate, but you can count anything you like. And if you're thinking of something happy, that helps. Especially helps kids, but it'll help your psyche.
So you don't speed up because you're getting stressed out.
Right. It actually lowers your heart rate.
Interesting.
You know, so if you think of something you love and practice that. So you're in an earthquake, you're under the table, you're next to the ocean. Right. This is important if you're next to the ocean. If you're not next to the ocean, don't worry about it. Just stay in place under cover.
And you're talking about a mile, a quarter mile? What's close?
A mile, even a couple miles. You know, our rule of thumb used to be a mile inland was safe, but the last few tsunamis have taught us otherwise. So, yeah, you know, in Japan we had inundation up to 10 miles.
Right.
So.
And that was a big quake.
That was a big quake.
So you have a quake, you're counting slowly to 20.
To 20.
What's next?
And if you get to 20 and it's still shaking, you need to evacuate. And that is, that's scary.
Yeah.
Because you're evacuating in a live event that's still shaking. You know, 1964 shook for 4.5 minutes. Indonesia shook for 12 minutes.
Wow. Right.
Japan, I think, shook for 6. I'm not sure of that, but it was long. Anyway, more than 20 seconds.
And that's a sign of a very major earthquake, the worst.
Well, 20 seconds is a magnitude 7, so that's not the worst. But what a magnitude 7 can do is trigger a landslide. And those landslides might be a submarine landslide, so you won't see it, you won't hear it, you won't know it, and then the water's moving. So that's really, really, really dangerous. That's what happened in '64 first. Seward, Valdez, Whittier all had landslides first.
And when you're talking about the water is a warning sign too. What happens with the water that gives you a very easy visual sign that something's changing?
Not guaranteed. It might go out, it might go way out really fast enough to leave the fish behind, but that's not guaranteed. It might just be a fast flood instead. So either way, if it's acting like a super fast rising tide, faster than a tide should rise, get out of there. And if it goes out really fast, get out of there. You know, we lost a lot of lives because people will go check out the new tide pools or pick up fish or shells or, you know, so, and it should feel weird. You know, it should be weird.
So pay attention to those natural warning signs and how you feel, because those are maybe the only clues you have.
Right, and you know, sound also. You can hear a tsunami. It'll sound like a roaring train, maybe. Or it might sound silent because the water's been pulled out. Right. And that's pretty weird. Imagine camping at night near the beach, and all of a sudden you don't hear the ocean anymore. That would be different. That would be weird. Yeah. Okay. And then you also might hear blowing bubbles, and that's actually from the pressure that's blowing the air out from the sand grains, rock grains. So if you hear blowing bubbles, that's a little weird. Okay. Or clinking rocks, you know, like a rain stick. So those are the sound signs. So the visual is rushing in or rushing out, and roaring especially. Okay. Yeah. So it takes a lot of work to get people and keep people aware of what the tsunami warning signs are and what their risks are around Alaska. And there's a website that can help them do that. Where can they go online to get more information for their school, their home, their church, their business? Oh, there's several. The National Tsunami Warning Center has a website as well, and the easiest way to look that up is just NTWC. NTWC. The URL is not intuitive at all. Okay. There's also ready.alaska.gov. The state of Alaska has a lot of helpful stuff. Preparedness kits. They have everything you need to get ready. Okay. And then for teachers and others, there's a wonderful curriculum called Alaska Tsunami Education Program. Alaska Tsunami Education Program. Okay. And that's AKwx. AKwx. Okay, very good. Those are really good tips to get more information and search that out and help your own community stay safe with the threat of tsunamis around Alaska. Next time we come back and talk to you some more about the Tsunami Ready program and get more in depth on how people can learn more about the risks and what to do here in Alaska. So thank you for joining us today, Cindy. And next time on Alaska Weather Facts, more on tsunamis around Alaska. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Again, not a lot different from yesterday, maybe a little less concentration now up near Point Barrow and to the north with this zone of heavier ice persisting. And it looks like pretty light winds for the CC for the forecast, but the ice edge expected to move southeastward 10 to 20 nautical miles through Friday. Coastal water forecast here, southeast coast, pretty easy. West winds 15 knots. The entire stretch of the coastline here sees 11 feet. Northwest 15 for Clarence Strait, south 15 Stevens Passage. Small craft advisories for another day there for Lynn Canal at 30 knots. Those come down to 20 knots for the day on Wednesday. South 15 Stevens Passage, northwest 20 for Clarence Strait, and west 15 on the south coast with 8-foot seas, and then south to southwest 10 to 15 on the north coast with the sea still at 8 feet. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, south winds 15 knots with 2-foot seas, westerlies 30 knots here, actually pretty common right out of Kamishak Bay. Across the Barrens, western North Gulf Coast turns southwest 25 knots there in that Middleton Island zone, and south 15 Prince William Sound with slight seas. Small craft advisories for Cook Inlet, south-southwest 25 to 30 knots with seas up to 10 feet. And then for Wednesday, those really go much lighter with winds southerly at 10, 2 to 3 foot seas. Kamishak Bay, southwest at 10, 15 knots here for the Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast. Southeast 15 on the east side, Prince William Sound, light southeasterlies. Bristol Bay, west, 30 knots tomorrow, seas 13 feet. Gales out of the west for Shelikof Strait at 35 knots and seas 10 feet, 30 knots on the east side of Kodiak. And small craft advisories from Sitkinak to Castle Cape for those west winds at 25. Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, west to 20. And for Wednesday, west-northwest, 20 knots across the peninsula about sums it up. There are 6 to 7 foot seas. Lighter winds in store for Bristol Bay, northwest at 15. And from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, southwest at 20, southwest 15 on the east side of Kodiak, really laying down there in Shelikof Strait, variable to northwest at 10. And for the Fox Islands, west 20 knots tomorrow, 8 to 10 foot seas, 15 to 20 out of the west here for Adak and Atka, and 10 to 15 for the western Aleutians. Then coming around to the southeast, only at 15 knots in response to that next system. They'll spread some light rain in across Yumi and Attu, but not much of a wind producer. Otherwise, northwest 15, central Aleutians, 5 to 6 foot seas, and then northwest 20 across Unalaska Island, 7 to 6 foot seas. And for the southwest coast, small craft advisories tomorrow, south of Nunivak Island, west 30 knots, west 20 knots for St. Paul, St. George, north 25 for the northern Bering Sea around St. Matthew Island, northwest 25 on the Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, north at 30. West 20 knots for St. Lawrence Island on Wednesday with 25 knot winds, good for a small craft advisory there along the Yukon Delta coast. South of Nunivak Island, north at 20, northwest 20 for both the Pribilofs on up into the northern Bering. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, tomorrow, Tuesday, west 10 to 15. A little brisker there on the central coast up to 20, and then back down to 15 knots, and then from Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, north 20, Cape Thompson down to Wales, 30 knots out of the north. And for the Wednesday forecast, Wales here in the southeast Chukchi Sea, west 20 knots, and then from Cape Thompson up, you pick up the small craft advisories, and 25 knot winds increase to 30 knots on the central coast, and then southwest 25 for the eastern stretch of the coastline. And for tonight, this low drifting eastward now continues to weaken, but keeps it pretty breezy and wet over the Bristol Bay, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta areas, and back up towards St. Lawrence Island, where that high surf advisory is out all night tonight until 6 a.m. tomorrow, back up toward Wales. Dry in the northwest, kind of unsettled, chance of rain, definitely cloudy here. Tanana Valley, White Mountains southward to the North Gulf Coast. Rain gets lighter here, especially for the Yakutat area in the northern panhandle, but starts to push farther to the south and southeast. And then for Tuesday, tomorrow, just some drier conditions with the front out of the area. Chance of rain here with an upper level trough over southern Alaska, and that becomes nicer on Wednesday. Thank you for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.